Hello, thank you for joining me once again for the continuation of the readings from the projection of the Astral Body by Sylvan, Muldoon and Hereward, Carrington. We continue on page 111. The phantom can pass through needle points without feeling. I appreciate you joining me once again. Thank you for liking and sharing my page. And off we go. The phantom can pass through needle points without feeling. It was about 2 years ago that I read the first accounts of repercussion of sensibility caused by needle pricks on the astral body, and I constructed a rude pricker to test this out. Taking a board which reached from the head to the foot of the bed, I planted several needles. I pointed several needles in it, pointed outward, and fastened this to the irons of the bed, about 18 inches directly over the place where I slept, so that the needles pointed downward. I succeeded in producing one projection, and experienced another which was unintentional. During the weeks when I was trying this experiment, although the separations were not extensive, I did pass through the board with at least the tinge of feeling. It is for this reason that I have been speculating upon the belief that repercussion of sensibility, as produced by the French experimenters, is somehow accounted for by reason of hypnosis. I readily admit, however, that I may be wrong in this idea. Let us now see how this might be hypnotic delusion of the senses. I quote Professor L.A. Hereward. Delusions of the senses during hypnotic trance. When this state is complete, hypnotic trance, the mind of the subject remains dormant until aroused to activity by some suggestion conveyed to him by the operator, and to which he responds as automatically as a locomotive obeys the manipulations of its driver. He is indeed, for the time, a mere thinking of automaton. He is given up to has the domination of any idea that may be made to possess him, and he has no power of judging its consistency with the actual facts, because he is unable to bring it into comparison with them. Thus, he may be played upon like a musical instrument, thinking, feeling, acting just as the operator wills that he should think, feel, speak, or act, but this not has been represented, because he has been brought into direct submission to that of the operator, but because his will is in abeyance, and all his mental operations are directed by such suggestions as the operator may choose to impress upon his consciousness. His mind, having lost its power of self-direction, cannot shake off the yoke of any dominant idea, however tyrannical, but it must execute its behests. Cannot bring any notion with which it may be possessed to the test of common sense, but must accept it. It cannot recall any fact, even the most familiar, that is beyond its immediate grasp. In another place, Professor Harrington says the organs of sense and perception are all channels for the conveyance of any suggestion made to the subject. In very many ways, by a look or a movement, the hypnotist is able to convey a suggestion to his subject, which will be quite as potent as if made by means of speech. With a subject in deep hypnotic trance, a needle can be run through the flesh with the suggestion to the subject that it is not felt, and such will be the result. Now, if a needle were stabbed into the space occupied by the astral body, while that body is exteriorized and under hypnosis, why could the subject not be made to feel this prick in the physical? For we have already learned that sense currents can be presented in the astral body, in the cable, and in the physical, all at the same time. Thus, even though the pain be imagined, it would be as real to the subject as if it were not imagined, and through duplicate sensation would be felt in the physical body. The question in my mind is the subject normally conscious when under the control of an operator, or is he subject to delusions, illusions, and hallucinations of the senses? I think the latter is the case. If the prick of the needle actually did make contact with the sensibility of the astral body, and the subject were normally conscious, he should feel it there. But I wonder if this same repercussion of sensibility would occur if the operator suggested that it would not be felt, as he pricked the space occupied by the astral counterpart. For my own part, I cannot understand how a subject can be himself while exteriorized, can understand the true significance of what is taking place, and still be under hypnotic control. Most of the French experiments were conducted through the medium of hypnotism, but whether a normal condition of the phantom can be brought about in this manner, I am not prepared to say. All that I have undertaken to say, however, in connection with repercussion of sensibility, is nothing more than speculation. In truth, I am no authority on astral projection, which is induced by hypnosis. I have never met with repercussion of sensibility, from the astral to the physical, caused by contact of any material object with the astral body, although a repercussion of the astral body itself is very common. On the other hand, if the phantom were materialized at the end of the line of force, the needle could prick this temporary material body and, through duplicate sensibility, could be felt in the permanent material body. This would be logical, consistent, whereas picking a needle into the non-material form and having it felt when the needle does not make contact with the astral seems to me to be very inconsistent. Suppose this theory to be true, that a needle prick on the exteriorized astral body actually would make contact with the sensibility. Wouldn't an astral entity have to be constantly on the watch, dodging pointed material objects? If he did not, these pointed objects would make contact with his sensibility. There is something wrong with this theory. I believe it is a delusion of the senses. However, it would be the height of folly for me to say that the repercussion of sensibility, as claimed by the French authorities, is impossible, especially when such notable men proclaim it to be true. There is one thing of which I feel certain, however, in this connection, which is that, if repercussion of sensibility takes place, it does so while the phantom is within cont'd activity range. Let us again recall what cont'd activity range is. It is a range of near separation, when the astral line of force is active and above its minimum size, when pull and resistance are present, when the senses cut capers and duplicate themselves, when duplicate motivity can be present, when catalepsy is almost always present, when instability of the body is usual, and when the breathing and heartbeat can activate the cable, when repercussion of the astral body can take place. In short, it is a state of separation which is not perfectly free, and in which abnormalities can exist. It is a state when, although the phantom is separated, it is still bound to the physical counterpart, through the medium of the line of force, more or less firmly, according to the individual who is the projector. Page 114, Duplicate Sensibility and Obsession. Let us again turn our attention for a few moments to transmission of sensibility from the physical to the astral body through the medium of the cable. It has long been known that many victims of violent death, especially when death was painful, have returned shortly after mediums have complained. It has long been known that many victims of violent death, especially when the death was painful, have returned shortly after to mediums and have complained of still feeling the pain which was present in the physical body at the same time of death. Most mediums, believing the astral body to be immune to pain, have, while in communication with such tormented phantoms, told them that they, the phantoms, were dead, in a body immune to pain, and that the ego in the astral is suffering from pain which is purely imaginary. These bewildered beings do not merely imagine their agony in the beginning, even though the state of mind does keep them obsessed with the idea long after the cable has snapped. What really happens in such a case is this. The phantom at the time of death was exteriorized and within cont'd activity range, while sensibility was transmitted from the physical body to the astral body, just as I, while exteriorized and within cont'd activity range, could feel the weight of the dog in my side while in the astral body. Now, that part, if you haven't read the other parts, you won't understand what that part means. In regards to the dog, it was an experience that was written earlier on in the book. So I would recommend that you go back perhaps a few of the videos to understand what that is. Because for people that have learned or listened to the book from the beginning will understand what that is. This pain, in conjunction with the bemuddlement of such an experience as the victim is passing through, actually drives him mad. Obsessed, as the obsession continues long after the cable serves, it is not merely a condition of mind which puts the phantom in this predicament. It is the actual transference of sensation across the line of force, transference of the actual pain, mind you, and in this madness the victim is often constantly living through, even for months afterwards, the death he experienced. In other words, he continues to experience the death and its painfulness. Let me quote an experience which illustrates this. Mrs. M. E. Hess, a personal friend of the present writers, who is an obsession healer living in LaSalle, Illinois, gives this account, which we will call The Case of 89, page 115. A patient, a lady of about 35 years of age, was brought to Mrs. Hess. The patient believed that she was a locomotive engine and would make all the sounds and characteristics of what she thought she was. She would go through the house, chug, 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 then blow out steam, then whistle, and would follow the track through imaginary towns. On investigation, the healer found that a spirit in the astral was constantly following the woman, and that this spirit was a locomotive engineer. Next, Mrs. Hess got into communication with the obsessor and learned that he was killed in a violent manner under his engine. Number 89. This, in fact, was what he called himself, 89, and he was in such bewilderment that he thought he was still under the engine. He could not understand that he was dead and in the astral body. Wow, this is really interesting. I don't remember this account here. By bringing the engineer's mother onto the scene, who had passed away prior to that time, the obsessor was eventually enlightened and found that his body was not hurting him after all, but it had not been mere imagination in the beginning. 89 was thrown into this insanity in this outset by actually being conscious in the astral body, within cord activity range, when duplicate sensation existed, and he could feel the engine upon him, accompanied by the pain it brought. You wonder at these astral victims becoming insane, being themselves obsessed. Why such an experience as this would drive anyone to a similar state of mind, but fortunately factors at the time of death are not always as unfortunate as they were in this case. Consciousness does not always manifest at the same time and place. Sensibility does not always circulate in three organisms at once. The physical body, astral body, and the astral cable. Deaths are not always violent and crushing. Yet this case goes to show that there is, after all, a reason why some spirits return and complain of the pangs which they are still experiencing, and which to them are more than imagination. Do not think for 1 minute that this pain in the astral is not genuine. It is real. The sensibility is the same sensibility that it was when the bodies were in coincidence. And although the astral phantom is insensible to physical things, if he does contact the pain by the way of the physical, through the cable, it is a real pain, and stays after the cable snaps and until it is cured by the mind. It is, I realize, hard to conceive of sensibility existing apart from the nerves of the body, but merely because it seems incredible is no reason why it cannot be done. Is no reason why it cannot do so. Perhaps this in some manner explains why some persons who had arms or legs severed claimed to be able to feel the arm or the leg after the stump was healed. Might it not be through the sensibility present in the astral, occupying the space formerly occupied by the physical arm? In Physical Phenomena and the War, Hereward Carrington has quoted a case similar to that of the Engineer 89. We will call this The painful bayonet case. On New Year's Day, 1916, three friends were sitting from spirit communication. Sorry, let me start again here. The painful bayonet case. On New Year's Day, 1916, three friends were sitting for spirit communication when a soldier came to them, complaining that the bayonet which killed him was still through his body, Astral, and that it was giving him pain, that he wished to have it removed. After an extensive conversation between the astral entity and the three sitters, much was learned as to the phantom. That he was a Canadian, was the husband of a Mrs. Weston's cook, whose name was Alice, who lived in Herne Bay, near London, and other details. That his main concern was that the bayonet was hurting him. He had been run through by a German on Christmas Day, and he wanted it removed. One of the sitters replied, "You are deluding yourself. If you are dead, you are in a new body, and the bayonet may be sticking in the old body, but it is not really sticking in you now." To this the phantom replied, "Just try a bit yourself." It seems that the astral being was fully aware of the pain and would not admit that it was a delusion until one of the sitters apparently pulled the bayonet out. Where did this soldier get this idea of pain? From having it transmitted across the cable, from the physical, while conscious, because it was ultimately eliminated by the mind, and it does not prove that the pain did not exist. But you'll say, how do you account for the bayonet? Surely there was no bayonet sticking in the phantom's astral body. But there was, not a physical bayonet, but an astral form of a bayonet, created by the mind of the phantom. We'll discuss this, how the mind creates its own environment later. Thank you, that'll be it for today. Following page 117, duplicate and shifting motivity. Thank you so much again for joining me. I appreciate you very much, and I wish you have a wonderful start to your day. Thank you.